Okay, we've still got people coming in, but we're going to start on time. We're going to try to end on time as well. So thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Tyler Melling. I'm a board member of the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District, and I also serve on the Cedar City Council. Tonight, we are going to talk about water issues that apply to our whole county and some of the work the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District is doing in cooperation with the cities in our county and with the state to help ensure the water future of our county. Based on the questions submitted by you and other members of the public prior to this meeting, it's clear that some of you are here because you're worried about the drought and warming temperatures and the monsoonal storms that caused damaging floods this year. Some of you have questions about the state's new groundwater management plan and the tapering of water rights in this area. Some of you have questions about our wastewater reuse plans, conservation efforts, and the Pine Valley Water Supply Project. And some are concerned about population growth and whether we can supply our residents with water in the future. No matter what brought you here tonight, you're all welcome, and we're glad that you're here. To ensure we stay on schedule and address as many questions as possible, we'd like to set some expectations. You may have noticed as we came in, we have these tables at the back to submit questions as they occur throughout the evening. When we start answering questions, we'll first address the pre-submitted questions, of which there were many, and there were some common themes they'll get to there as well. And as time allows, we will address your questions that were submitted this evening. Those that we do not get to this evening will be answered by email and on the district web page in the days to come. Before our community panelists start answering questions, we're going to get some background on the Valley's water issues and some of the proposed solutions. Right after I sit down, we'll watch a 10-minute video about those issues, and then we'll have a 15-minute presentation from Paul Monroe. He is our general manager of the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District, has been in that position since 2012. Paul earned his Master of Business Administration from SUU, serves on several state committees and boards, and in his free time, Paul likes to spend rainy summer evenings making chocolate milkshakes by the creek, and he'll tell you about those later as well. Thanks again for coming, for submitting your questions, and for your continued participation in ensuring our community is prepared for a sustainable future.
Central Iron County Water Conservancy District's purpose is to ensure that water will be available for 50 years into the future under all gamuts of anything water. So we are here to make sure that there's going to be a sustainable water resource for future generations. This is Coal Creek right here behind me. It's the only perennial stream that flows into Cedar Valley. On average right now, we would be seeing about 100 CFS coming down Coal Creek, and we're a tenth of that. We're at 10 CFS, that's what that is right there. And so if this was 100 CFS, it would be raging, roaring, super loud. The water would be way higher, up to the level of probably some of those rocks and overflowing into those areas around there being wider. And that's the primary source of water that comes down that our agricultural producers have been using for decades since they first came into the valley. As the settlers first established here in Cedar City, right at the mouth of the canyon, they used the water for everything. In fact, that was their drinking water, the same water that they used to water their livestock, they drank out of. So they had the water diverted through each of the streets, went down through every little alley, and the families would go out with a bucket and bucket their water from Coal Creek into a barrel, and that's what they used for their drinking water. And so Coal Creek has been, the main kind of artery and source of our community since the settlers first got here. From the early 1900s on, as historically as we read, is that there were times of drought and there were times of lots of growth. And each of those scenarios brought on solutions or how are we going to sustain ourselves in the future. And there's been a long-standing objective and goals to be able to provide for future generations. That's what's always been part of our heritage here. We've got over 126 years of record, and this is a significant drought. We're drier than we've ever been before, and our community is continuing to grow. I don't know if anybody foresaw how big or what the population would be here, but we've got a booming economy and community here that continues to grow and thrive, and a wonderful university and everything that makes Cedar Valley great. And you couple that with the drought, and we are here to make sure that we've got water and water resources that will not only sustain us today, but in the future as well. Every year we use 7,000 acre feet more than what is brought into our basin, what is annually recharged into our aquifer. And if we do nothing, then eventually there's going to be some damage that will be done to our aquifer. There'll be compaction and fissures and things of that nature that really will affect us at the surface level, not only our water resources. And so further additional water resources need to be developed and provided. But if we do nothing, we may not be able to have a place for our children and grandchildren to live. And that's something that I think that we all want, right? We all want to be able to provide for that next generation. There are 3 areas that the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District that is really focusing on to be able to make sure that water is available in the future. And the first one is conservation. We've engaged our legislators, and we've been able to develop a lot of resources and pull in resources from the state and federal agencies to be able to do more with conservation. And one of those things primarily is within our agricultural community. Ag uses 75% of the water in our basin, and so we realize that if we can focus on that, we can really save the large amount of water. Agriculture is a part of us, it's a part of our heritage, and they've come a really long way with their efficiencies, and these new water practicing techniques that we've been helping them install really is bringing it up to where they're about 95 to 97% efficient. And so optimally, they're using water very efficiently when they're putting it through a center pivot and are irrigating with today's latest and greatest, newest technologies. Right behind me is a brand new linear irrigation system that was put in through some funding that the legislature set aside from the Agricultural Optimization Fund, and that was established a couple years ago. I actually sit on that committee, legislative committee, and we were able to help fund this here at SUU Farm. It's a partnership with SUU and Utah State, and we're really excited about it. What it has is a bunch of different nozzles in between each section of the well lines, and each of those nozzles will be analyzed with soil moisture probes that measure from 1 feet all the way down to 4 feet to be able to see how well each of those systems irrigates. And then they're going to do stress irrigation, where they'll actually put on less water, so they'll go from like 100% down to a 75% or maybe a 50%, and be able to see how well the crops perform in those situations. And so they'll harvest it and get a yield on each of those scenarios, and then be able to determine how much water plants actually need. Each one of these irrigation systems in between the well lines has a different amount and a different approach, and what we're trying to figure out is what system uses the least amount of water, or the most efficient way to use water and still be able to provide a high quality crop and yield. Irrigation here for crops in Cedar Valley, they use about 75% of the water, and so if we can become more efficient in the way we irrigate, that's a huge savings of water for all of us here in the basin. Other key focus is efficiencies, and that involves recharge and reuse. So recharge, over the last 5 years, we've done a tremendous amount of work building lots of different recharge basins where we're taking water that could not be used from Coal Creek, and we're really excited about the abilities that we have to be able to put water back down into the aquifer. Some of our gravel mines and gravel pits that we have in the area, we've just taken those and put in piping systems or canal systems and diversion structures so that we can pull this water and take it into these areas, and it goes into those gravelly layers and goes down into the aquifer very easily. In the western states, we're all starved for more water, and we are all looking at reuse, which is taking the water from our wastewater treatment plants and putting that to a better or more efficient use. So right now, the water that we have, it becomes treated and then it's kind of sub-irrigated and it's grazed on. But what we would like to do is take that water and bring it and put it into a system where we'll be able to allow an irrigator to idle their underground wells, and so that we can use that water that was kind of being just wasted, or a lot of it being evaporated, and put it to a use where that farmer will then be able to stop pulling water from the underground, which is declining, and use that water. And so it's just an optimal way to be able to use every drop we have and to help restore or bring up our water levels in our groundwater drinking water system. Currently, we're right here at what they call the neck of the desert, or right outside of Iron Springs Gap. And just behind me, you can see the corridor, which is going to go basically follow this roadway 99% of the way up north, up to Pine Valley, which is where our Pine Valley water supply will come from. Just to clarify really quick, just to the south over here is the Pine Valley Mountain, which is just north of Washington County. And so our water supply is going to come north of us in a different Pine Valley. But we've got 15,000 acre feet of water that we'll import through a large pipeline that comes down through this roadway and through the neck of the desert, Iron Springs Gap, and right into Cedar City. The significance of Pine Valley is that it will provide 15,000 acre feet of water per year into our basin. And that's renewable once it gets here, right? So it comes in, and not only is it just 15,000 acre feet of new water coming in, but as we flush our toilets and as it goes back down into the aquifer, there's a reuse component. So it's a multiplier of 15,000 acre feet. That's above and beyond what we don't have. We've known that we need to bring in additional water source. We know that there is a limited amount of source that we have, and that source is being mined. This is the best opportunity for us to be able to bring that source in. It provides us the opportunity to be able to grow, develop, and provide a community where our kids and our grandkids can live here. I'm really proud of what we're doing here in Iron County. We're leading in some of the latest technologies for agricultural efficiencies, and we're leading in recharge and putting water into the aquifer, water that was historically wasted. We're being able to put that down into the aquifer and recharge our basin. And so I'm really excited for what we're doing and what we've accomplished here in Cedar Valley and Iron County.
Thank you. I am just amazed at the turnout here tonight. Thank you to all of you who have come out. This is amazing. See a call for something to do with water, and I guess this is the turnout that you get, right? We really do appreciate all of you that have come. I wanted to share just a touch more about who we are. You not hear very well? You guys hear very well? Is that better? Yeah, a little higher. Is that better right there? All right. So I wanted to share just a little bit really quickly of who we are. The Water Conservancy District was voted on by all of us who are here, right? In Cedar Valley in 1997, there was a vote that was made so that we could create an entity that would specifically look in the future and make sure that water resources, water would be provided and available for our current residents as well as the future. And there's a 7-member board that oversees the Water Conservancy District, and they're appointed by the county commission. I wanted to share a little bit more about who we are, right? Like, who are we? And given the gratitude of, or given the significance of today, December 7th, given that 80 years ago today, Pearl Harbor happened, and as we think back to that moment when our nation wholeheartedly stepped up and joined in the fight to win World War II. We are all sons and daughters, grandsons, granddaughters of that greatest generation that fought for our freedoms and fought for the wonderful things that we enjoy today. We are a community of citizens that are still fighting for those things. We still want to fight for and provide for future generations and the ability to sustain ourselves, not only today, but in the future as well. There is a kind of an old quote or an old saying. It goes back, I know I've used it before many times, but Benjamin Franklin has been known to say it, and you could probably trace it back to Deuteronomy, and Moses probably said it in Deuteronomy chapter 6. But in essence, it kind of boils down to, we all stand on shoulders of those that have come before us. We all drink from wells that we didn't dig. And we all sit in the shade underneath a tree that we didn't plant. And from that and of that, we have a great community to rely on. And this picture right here is a lot of pictures of a lot of different people that are among our community that I have been associated with over my tenure, of those that are concerned about our community. Most of them that you see up here, and there's a lot of them that are out there that I see here today, that have been highly involved with water resources and making our community great. But these here, they've sat on my board, they're past board members or current board members. They are committee members, have been on the groundwater management plan committee. There's many members that served as the water advisory committee, which was a committee that we established a few years ago that took 2 years to learn about water issues. And after they fully divested and really dove in and tried to discover water issues and solutions, they came back to the Water Conservancy District and they said, the main thing that you need to do is you need to do a better job of educating the public. And I am significantly pleased with the amount of people that are here that have helped us with that effort, so that you can all become a little bit better educated in water issues, and hopefully some of the solutions that we have coming up. But if you would, just for a second, just please join me in applause for these people, as well as many others that are out there in the audience that sacrifice and provide for our valley and give freely. So we've got some issues, right? Some of those were highlighted in the video, but we know a few things. We know we have a declining aquifer. We know that we've had some significant climate issues with drought and drier years. We know that there's also the scary word of a groundwater management plan, which we'll touch on more throughout the panelist discussion. So there's a lot of issues, and one of them is what's going on. Where is our growth headed? The projections from the state office, governor's office managed budget, says it will grow by 69% over the next 50 years. So the latest census data that just came out from 2020 shows that we're just under 60,000 people here in Iron County, and that's our growth projections over that time frame. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other side of that is that comes with demand, and these are just the municipalities. These different colors of the bars are the different entities or municipality waters. And so, for instance, Cedar City's green, blue is Enoch, the district's gold, and red is Canaryville. And the blue line that's up above that is what our water demand would be if we didn't include our recharge and conservation projects. So if we kind of just stayed on the same linear movement of, hey, this is what we use per household, and we're going to keep on using this per household. That's not our objective. Our objective is to reach and meet the state goals, which are over the time frame of this, over the next 50 years, is to save 28% of, or conserve additional 28% of the water. And so that's what the demand is down below, right? So if we kind of sit on this or kind of say, yeah, we're not going to be any better at what we're doing, the demand curve would be up higher, and the one down below is the conserving route. We couple that with, as always mentioned, the groundwater management plan. So the groundwater management plan will take water rights and curtail them or hold them back from use throughout time. And if you look at just the municipalities in this sector, you can see there's a significant decline in 2050 when cuts start to occur. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, but overall, the takeaway here is that 75% of the water right portfolio among our municipalities will be taken away over the life of the groundwater management plan. Just to give another little visual, here is the demand line is the red line up above, and the shortfall over time is the red bars down below. So you can see in 2050, there's like a 4,000 acre foot deficit at that time of water rights. And then so on, 2080 at the end of the groundwater management plan, there's a 15,000 acre foot deficit. The other difficult issue is how dry it has been. And unfortunately, the outlook. Now, I will preface this. The last time that I don't get on social media a lot, but the last time I got on and posted about social media, and if you brought any eggs, I hope you don't throw them at me now, but was on July 16th. And NOAA at that time came out and they said, it's unlikely that we're going to have a very good monsoon season. And it was going to be really low. And then the next week, July 26th, my house flooded along with several of my neighbors. And then it seemed like it was just an ongoing flood after flood after flood in Cedar Valley. To highlight that, I want to show you over time some of our climate. And over time, we can see this is the climatology. Some of the wet periods are down below in the blue, and the drier periods are the red periods. So over the last 30 years, we've had some more drier periods than we have in the last 127 years that we have on record. The area where I want to draw your attention to, though, is on the very far right side. And it may be hard to see, but right here, there's a little teeny blip on the right side, and that is where the monsoons hit. So we were the driest on record up until July 26th when those monsoons hit. And all of that flood water that came down and went into our streets, that's that little teeny blip that you see on that chart there. So it caused a lot of damage, and granted, we'll take every drop we can get, but we wish it would come in more steady slow ways. So some of the solutions, again, a lot of those were highlighted in the video as far as recharge and conservation. I'd like to focus just for a second on our Pine Valley Water Supply Project and some of the misconceptions. So first of all, number one is its location. It's not in Washington County. It's north in Beaver County is where we have the water rights. We own the water rights there through a court decree. We reached a settlement with Beaver County on those water rights to obtain those water rights. We have given them, as part of that settlement, we gave Beaver County 2.3 billion gallons annually so that they could move forward with their projects in Wawa Valley. That's a mining operation in Wawa, as well as some other opportunities there. And so that's part of the settlement that we reached with Beaver County so that we could move forward with our projects in Pine Valley. So we own the water rights. We filed on their water rights in 2006. And I do want to highlight really quickly too that no, we're not stealing anybody's water. The water in Utah belongs to the state of Utah. And it's issued out through water rights. As you look throughout all of the state of Utah, there are multiple projects that bring water trans-basin diversion, so from valleys to valleys, through pipelines, canals, all over the place to other areas that need it. For example, most of the water in the Wasatch Front is not generated from the Wasatch Front. It comes off of the Wasatch back through Strawberry and the Central Utah project. So that's just one of the kind of misconceptions that I wanted to highlight. And the other one is the cost of the project. And I'm just going to really simplify this. So basically, we know the cost of the project is $260 million. And if you were to take that and you were to amortize that at 3% over 40 years, that would be a monthly payment of about $930,000 per month. And if you look at the households that are in Cedar Valley, that is 20,000 households. You divide the 20,000 households by the monthly payment, you would have a monthly bill increase of $46 a month. Now, if you look at that in the lifetime of the project to get it started and going, that's probably increased your bill $5 a month over the next 10 years. So that's the cost. But should all of us that are here that are community members, should we pay for that? Should, you know, that's a difficult question. I don't think that everybody's here should pay for that. New growth should be a part of that equation, right? And so there's some parts of that that are going to be part of the equation, and that's going to reduce the bill of what it would be for all of us. As you add more houses, of course, that spreads it out, so it doesn't cost us as much. Additionally, new growth should pay for a lot of that because they're coming in, and they will pay a portion of that through impact fees and connection fees. We also have the ability as a water conservancy district that we have taxes so that we can help pay this back through taxes. So we have three ways that we can fund this. And I just highlight on the left, just so that you're aware, I mean, it's just really simple, how much it would cost per connection if we stopped growing and if this was the project that was selected. I will state as well that we feel like as the water conservancy district, that is our objective that we provide options and provide educational materials for the public to select which project they're going to do. We feel like this is a great opportunity for our public, but ultimately you're going to be the ones that's going to pay for the bill. And you're going to be the ones that's going to make that decision. And we know as a district that we can't do it. It's got to come through our other cities as well. And they're a big contributor to it. So it's got to be agreed upon through all of our municipalities that this is a project that they want to do as well. So I just want to highlight just a couple of those things and make sure you're aware of that. And we'll probably highlight a few more as we go through the discussion panel here in a minute. So again, I just want to say thank you to all of you that have showed up today. And I really appreciate it. I wasn't sure if we were going to get 30 people. Maybe 40, but to see everyone in the standing room only, I guess we should have held it in the Centrum or something. But thanks again. I'm going to turn the time now over to Chris Holmes, and we'll start our panel discussion. But Chris, I just want to introduce him really quick. He received his master's from SUU in communication. He's a journalist with KSUB, and you may know him from the Big Picture Show if you listen to the AM radio in the morning. And he has won a number of awards for radio journalism, and he's just naturally a great moderator for the questions, the hard, tough questions that he asks, and we're grateful for him for coming and helping us out today. So Chris. We also need to get the panelists to come up as well. You're going to need one of those, right?
I will quickly introduce our panelists, but a longer bio is on the pages that you found on your seats. So I'm going to keep it short so that we can address as many questions as possible in the time that we have. Our panelists: Nathan Moses, engineer with the Utah Division of Water Rights. On the end, Rob Dotson, Enoch City Manager. Terri Hartley is with us. She is Cedar City Council member. Paul Monroe, who you just heard from, Central Iron County Water Conservancy District General Manager, and Dr. David Tufte, who is with Southern Utah University. The Conservancy District has invited you here to learn, ask questions, and to collectively address the water issues at hand and in the future. Over the past 3 weeks, community members have submitted questions, and we'd like to address those during the time that we have. We're going to start in the area with the most questions. And as you see in the graph above me, most of the questions were directed or revolved around population and growth. So we're going to start with that issue and then work our way clockwise around the wheel. Again, feel free to submit additional questions by using the comment boxes at the back of the room. We will, if time allows, draw from those questions as well, but all questions will be addressed. Any questions that we don't get to tonight will be addressed through emails or from FAQs that'll be posted on the Conservancy District website, and you'll find that website on the back page of the information that was in your seat. So without any further delay, let's begin with question number 1, which is directed to Rob Dotson. If water is so scarce, why do cities continue to approve building permits to developers?
That is a great question. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As the Enoch City Manager, as some of my neighbors who are here and friends and family know, we're growing at a clip that's really, really fast. And it's a challenge. Well, we also have to understand that our economy, which is based upon capitalism, and our Constitution of both the United States and of the state of Utah protects property rights. So you as a property owner have the right to build a house on your property. And within that constitutional parameters, we create states and create legislatures. And those legislature, the state of Utah, has created parameters by which cities can actually function. They set the rules by which we can allow and have people subdivide their property. They create the rules by which we put in water and require for water and sewer and for all those amenities that we all enjoy when we moved here. I would dare say that most of us are moved here by either birth or a car. Would you agree? So we're all here together, moved into this area and own property. We have the rights to use that property within the parameters set by a republic, a representative government. Now, what that means to all of us is that if someone lives next to us and has a piece of property that they want to subdivide, the government cannot say no, but can set the parameters so that when they do connect to the water and they do connect to sewer, which of course is economies of scale, right? I mean, it's a lot cheaper for the city to drill a well than it is for you to have one in your backyard. It's a lot better for the city to have a well than for you to, or a sewer plant, than for you to get a septic tank in everybody's backyard and contaminate the water system. So really the parameters are set by state code, and we cannot deny development. In fact, recently the state code changed that there's no such thing as a moratorium on land use. We can create a temporary land use ordinance when we're trying to go through a process to change a code or to change some kind of regulation. And that land use ordinance can only be in place for 6 months. So those parameters are what we have to work with in this county and in the state of Utah. Ideally, what would happen is we would have all the resource of water that we want. Well, we do live in a desert. And so the cities, the counties, and the state of Utah have to work within those parameters. And the most important one that we're going to talk about tonight is water rights, in my mind. As a city manager, I maintain a certain amount of water rights for Enoch City. Cedar City has the same issue, and Paul Monroe put that very well on the slides there. Those water rights are limited, and they are I guess you could say a part of our financial portfolio also. They have a value to them. And so our economy is also a part of that. And so those are the parameters we have to work with. We cannot stop growth, but we can wisely get the resources available so that people can use their property to the highest use and the highest value.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will be directed to Terri Hartley. Terri, why are residents told to conserve when the area keeps growing and cities and schools have large amounts of unused grass that they continue to water?
Well, we all need to do our part, and we can do better. But if you look at this chart that's in front of you, Iron County is actually already doing a pretty good job of that. We're the 4th lowest water user of the 29 counties in Utah, and we compare very favorably to our neighboring counties. When your home was built, it was allotted a certain amount of water right, and then the developers of your subdivision were required to either bring an existing water right or pay a development fee to the city for them to go out and acquire the water rights. Most residents are doing okay, as shown by this chart, but we have many users in the valley that are using over the amount of water that was allocated to that home when it was built. And so at the first of the year, Cedar City is actually going to be reviewing our water user fees, and those people that are using more water per their monthly billing will see a reflection in that, and hopefully that will encourage them to start using some of the conservation ideas that we'll be putting out. The municipalities and the school districts do maintain open grass areas. These are provided for our public to use for leisure, for recreation, and just to make our community nice. Much of the grass owned by SUU and the school district and Cedar City are irrigated using secondary water sources or surface water rights. The golf course and the cemetery, they are watered off of a well that pumps water that has too much total dissolved solids in it to be used for drinking water. And so I know we see a lot of comments, especially out on social media, why are we not supposed to be watering when the schools, the churches and whatnot? But keep in mind, those are those secondary water systems, and they don't come from our drinking water supply. As shown earlier, we are currently overdrying our aquifer, and unless we allow new development, our existing users, as Paul mentioned, will cover the full cost of bringing new water to our valley. Building and impact fees help us spread that cost to new users. As long as those policies are fair and well thought out, growth and development pays for itself and also helps our existing residents cover the cost of their projects as well.
Thank you, Terri. Next question we'll direct to Nathan Moses. What is the groundwater management plan, and how will or how can the state legally take away water rights?
So as I answer this question, we'll watch this animation. As you see the colors get closer to red, this is demonstrating that we are suffering from a lowering groundwater table. The dates here range from 1940 to, I believe, 2019. And so as this develops, you'll see that in the Cedar City, west of Wichita, where Cedar City's main production well is, it gets quite red. And up by Enoch, there's another spot that gets quite red. Around 1983, we saw a bounce back. It got lighter again, and we saw some of the groundwater levels come back up. But those were extraordinary storms that came through. And without those on a consistent basis, we continue to see these sharp declines in our groundwater table. And so because of these, the state engineer is tasked with developing groundwater management plans. Okay, that's the tool that we have by statute. And can I move to the next slide? And what that is we have to go in, we have to establish the area as a critical management area, which means that the safe yield is being exceeded on a long-term average. You'll see in this slide that the safe yield for this valley is calculated at 21,000 acre feet, that we're currently using 28,000 acre feet of depletion, and that our potential is over 50,000 acre feet. These are round numbers. And so our job is to help this basin before it becomes a worse problem, right? And so let me just talk about the elements of a groundwater management plan. And if we could move to the next slide while I do that. So the first thing, as I stated, is that we have to declare the area a critical management area. We did this in 2016 when we held our first public meeting. From that point going forward, what we do is we develop a priority schedule, and that's what you see right here. So we didn't just do this on our own. We invited the public to participate through our public meetings. We held 3 of them. And then we also met with a local groundwater committee and took whatever comments the public wanted to give us. And those are all posted on our website as a record. So what this priority schedule does is it shows what water rights will have to be curtailed over time if this situation does not get better. You'll see that the first cut comes in 2035, and then the second cut comes at 2060, if I'm not mistaken. 50, pardon me, 50. And the reason why we have those 2 15-year increments was a request from the committee that said, hey, most loans are issued on a 30-year basis. So if we could settle on those so people could do some planning, then that would be good. And so we ended up there. Our goal here is to get back to a 21,000 acre foot depletion each year, which matches the safe yield. And the priority date for that level of water right is 1934. And I'm sure that number's out there as people buy and sell water rights. They're looking for pre-1934 water because that seems to be the most protected water right as we go through this process. The next part of developing a groundwater management plan is we describe how depletions will be calculated going forward. And so part of that for us is we do a mapping effort every year for the bigger irrigation projects in the valley, and we monitor what's happening there. And then for cities, for example, we rely on them to provide records to us so we can do some calculations. And so we extract data from that diversion information and calculate what the depletions are. And we will become more heavily invested in that as time marches on. In that section, there is an incentive. So as Paul spoke about, they do have some recharge projects. And in the adoption of this groundwater management plan, the state engineer at that time decided that it would be fair to allow any recharged water to count against those first cuts. And so there would be an immediate incentive for any recharged water that wasn't otherwise being recharged before. Okay. Now, the groundwater management plan also allows for voluntary arrangements. It doesn't describe what those might be, but any good ideas that come forward and any group of people that want to combine their efforts, they can present that to the state engineer, and he or she can accept that, and it can become part of the groundwater management plan. I won't go into what those may be because they can be as creative as you are. And then finally, the groundwater management plan is meant to be adopted slowly so that people can plan for it and recover from any of the negative consequences of it. And also it's an adaptive management. So if we see that the groundwater is stabilizing prior to the date that we've established, then we can cut the groundwater management plan off early, right? We don't have to go to 1934. The flip side of that is true too, because our mission here is to not exceed safe yield. So if it continues to drop even after we reach 1934, then we may have to dig a little deeper. I just want to make the statement that it is truly our hope as the Division of Water Rights that we don't have to implement even the first cut. Is it likely? I don't think so. But the hope that everyone has is that we don't have to have anybody suffer from this. But we do need to be prepared for it because it is on the books, it is law, and it can be executed. I should mention that this project that the Conservancy District is proposing, the Pine Valley Agreement here, it is not required by us that water replace water rights that may be curtailed in the valley. Okay, we don't have the statutory authority to do that. Thinking about the curtailment of water rights, I know that it appears that the state engineer is coming and taking people's water. The water rights will remain in the name of the owner of record. Okay, they just won't be able to be diverted if they're called for curtailment because the resource is limited. This is easy to see on a surface system. Each year, Coal Creek flows, and there's many users on that system that don't expect their water rights to be fulfilled on a bad year. We have a different scenario with the groundwater because you can just put your straw down a little bit deeper and continue to pump. But if we're exceeding safe yield, then it's like having a shortage on a surface system. We need to step in and limit the water rights that can take water so that we don't exceed the limits of our resource.
Okay, thank you. Dr. David Tufte. These water projects are built, won't you have to increase rates, fees, and taxes? Will this price us and our children out of a home? At what point do you consider a moratorium on new construction and supply?
Hi, everybody. So I was brought onto this project. It's not like I'm a great expert in water, but I think Paul wanted somebody to actually kind of check the numbers to get somebody on the side of the water district that understood the spreadsheets and whatnot. And I went through them, and that rough number that Paul put up there about $50 a month increase in your bill is roughly correct. Now, apologies, Paul. Paul misspoke a little bit about 20 minutes ago. And so that would be like a $5 increase in your monthly bill happening once a year. The way I heard it, it was like $5 every month. And so wanted to make sure nobody thought that was the case. Okay. So I'm not happy about $5 a month, but I think that that's a doable number. Okay. And as far as Terri goes and, residential usage, I'm one of those people that probably uses more water than I should. I got a big dog and, he's constantly wrecking my yard and I'm always starting new grass seed. So I'm not happy about it, but I do recognize that for residential users, water is underpriced. This is not a local problem. This is all across the Western United States. And probably we need to be charging people more or something more realistic. Okay. $50 a month is not going to be fun, but I think that will get the project costs covered. And I think to the extent to which we move some of those costs over onto new construction, that will lower the increase in bills for all the rest of us. Now, one of the things they tasked me with, I said I was the one doing the math. They wanted somebody to kind of forecast what was going to happen to the price of water rights out in the future. And, when I sat down and looked at that, did you just snicker at me? Yeah. My thinking was doing this a year and a half ago is I know what the end result is going to be, but I don't know exactly how long it's going to take to get there. And then we had a meeting last week and Tyler and Terri came in and said, we're kind of at this point where for the city to buy up water rights, it's competitive with bringing the water in by pipeline with Pine Valley. I knew that point was coming. I didn't realize it was here yet. Okay, I thought maybe it was 10 or 20 years out. So we are going to have these increases in prices. Okay, would a moratorium on building help? We've already heard that, we really can't do a moratorium, but even if we could, it's not going to solve the problem that our demand is already high, because we like our lawns and we like our soccer fields and we do overuse water all across the West. And so we do need to do something to address that, okay? New building can be part of the solution as long as we have impact fees on developers, surcharges on development of water rights and things along these lines. We can kind of put some of those costs onto the newcomers to reduce the costs on those of us that are here. I don't think it's realistic to get those costs down to zero on you and me, okay? But I certainly think we can defray parts of them. Now, Paul, we wanted to split this question. Do you want to take off from there, or you're content to have me keep going?
I think you got it, yeah.
Okay. All right, a problem that I keep raising, and some of you know that I'm also did some consulting for the Lake Powell pipeline about 10, 15 years ago in a couple different rounds. For all of our communities, we face the problem that eventually we are going to run out of water, and it probably is not going to be in your lifetime, but it is probably going to be in your children's lifetime. And the thing is, when we run out of water, it's not the most horrible thing for some of us, but who it's going to be really hard on is our kids, okay? Because we are going to turn into a place like Santa Barbara or Costa Mesa or something like that, where our kids can't afford to stay here, okay, when we hit that hard limit of how much water we've got. We saw the population projections earlier from the state. Honestly, I think those are conservative. I think we're going to get to that population earlier, and that means we're coming up on that water limit sooner, okay? So yes, I do think we need to increase fees. I don't think we probably need to increase taxes. I think this can be paid for by water users. But having said that, we do need to do something to get more water into the community. And I think the Pine Valley Project is the best way to do that.
Terri, back to you. Why don't we remove turf instead of paying more to import water? What can we do to better conserve?
Well, right now we are conserving water, but as a community, every individual, business, and government entity should be looking at conserving more. As Paul indicated earlier, the state has mandated us over the next 50 years that we need to conserve nearly 30% of what we're currently using right now. So it's going to be incumbent on all of us to work on that. As the Water Conservancy District, we've helped our agricultural community become more efficient. We've actually converted over 2,000 acres to the new irrigation practices that you saw in the video, and we're actively researching with our partnership with SUU and USU on other irrigation practices to further save some water there. According to a recent study by the Utah Department of Water Resources, the cost of a turf buyback program is nearly 3 times more expensive, as you can see up on the, make sure the slide is up there, than the cost of the Pine Valley water supply project. You can see right now it's estimated about $17,333 per acre foot on the Pine Valley project. If we were to do a Utah turf rebate at $3 a square foot for lawn, in some places like Las Vegas that have done that, it'd be $56,800. So I know I've had a lot of people saying, we're waiting for you to do a turf buyback program in Cedar City, and we probably will not be doing that because of the cost. You can see if we upgrade our wastewater treatment plant, comes around $18,000 an acre foot. If we would not have withdrawn from the Lake Powell project, would have been $40,000 an acre foot. So you can see these costs are really high, And even though we look at this $260 million to build this Pine Valley project, when compared to other sources of water, it's really, in the same realm. One of the studies that we did, it looked at Cedar City, rather than importing water, that we would buy up the existing agriculture rights in the valley. And even if every one of those were available to us, it still would not provide the amount of water that we needed by 2070. And I calculated out the cost. Right now, the pre-1934 water rights are about 10,000 an acre foot. And that would be right around $180 million for us to buy up those water rights. So you can see this is going to be expensive, whatever direction we go, but we want all of you to be involved and understand what our options are as we move forward, because we want feedback from you. We've established ordinances within the water district for water-wise landscaping. And most recently, the Cedar City Council is considering a new water acquisition ordinance. In fact, it's going to be voted on tomorrow night. So if you want to tune into the City Council, that includes an option for water smart landscapes in new developments. Research shows that we don't want a pure xeriscape of just rock. We need open spaces to recreate, and also green landscape, and grass has a cooling effect on our environment, and it also absorbs floodwaters better. So as you're looking to conserve your water, please don't tear out all of your landscape and replace it with rock. We'll have other problems to deal with in the future if we go that direction.
Thank you. Dr. Tufte and Paul, much of this question has already been addressed, but I'll leave it to you to decide what additional information you might provide us. How much will the Pine Valley Water Supply Project increase my bill? Is this project feasible? While this project appears to be necessary and sound, we're concerned about being in the same position 20 or 50 years from now.
I'll chime in on the easy part. I've talked with Dr. Tufte about this before. He's had this same question, at least the latter half of it. I think we've pretty well covered what the cost of the project is and whether or not it's feasible. And of course, it's easier for an economist to say that, or more appropriate. But I think I'm going to redirect that question back to you, Dr. Tufte, at least on the latter part, specifically of, 20, 50 years down the road, what's going to happen then?
Thanks. That's not a pretty thing just because of population growth. We are currently short on water. We all know we live in the desert. Eventually, we're going to run out of water. That is the limit on what we can do in this area. If we didn't live in the desert, it would be something else that limited our growth, land availability or something like that. But for us, it's water. And there will come a point where Cedar City is as big as it possibly can be. The Pine Valley pipeline and the water it brings is going to help put that off. And it's not going to eliminate that problem, but maybe if we're judicious and we think about this over the next 50 years, maybe we can put ourselves in a better position. Part of the reason we're here now is maybe we should have been having this meeting in 1970 or 1980 or 1990, and we didn't do that. So we're doing it now, which is a good thing. I'm glad that you're all here and thinking about this stuff. But we're never going to get around the idea that there is a limit to the size of Cedar City. We are never going to be as big as St. George, and St. George is never going to be as big as Las Vegas. There's just a finite amount that we can actually do, and that is coming up on us. So in 20, 50 years, are we going to be in the same position? The answer is sort of yes, but we're going to be out of options at that point. We're going to be Cedar City is as big as it can possibly get. Okay, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. This is a desirable area. I know I've lived here for a long time, but I wasn't born here. The same things that drew me here are drawing other people. It just can't draw them forever. Is that what you wanted to hear, Paul?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Not really. No, we'd love to have solutions forever, right? That the tap and the well never went dry. But it gets to be pretty speculative when you get out there a far distance. We know that this water supply project will supply us for the next 50 years based on current growth projections. But I don't think we can discount ourselves and the human race as far as what opportunities, what conservation measures, how we grow and develop, and what new technologies become available in the future. So, you know, it's kind of difficult to say, you know, what's going to happen in 100, 200, 300 years. I mean, those are pretty far reaching. 20 to 50 years, we know that this project will sustain us and supply us through there. And the future, of course, it is uncertain. Lots of things can happen economically, environmentally. And the best thing we can do is just have the options available and ready to go for when our community says, yeah, let's go and let's do.
Can I add a little bit?
Yeah.
And again, you know, something that I've learned independent of this project, but, you know, if you go back 50 years, they were not necessarily going to put I-15 through Cedar City. Okay. I-15 could have gone through other places. Think about it. If I-15 had gone through the West Desert, had gone through, you know, Delta and London and so forth, would we be as big as we are now? And the answer is no. What I-15 did is allow us to grow faster over the last several decades. But does that bring that water limit closer to us? It does. Okay, so I-15 had some pluses and minuses associated with it. We certainly like having the interstate now, but part of that is having the water to supply the people that drive down I-15 and like what they see and say, hey, I'd like to get a house in Cedar City. Okay. And then one additional thought, Paul's absolutely right about, you know, speculation going way out, but, you know, if we're going 50 or 100 years or 200 years out in the future, you know, we've got pipelines all over this country. Okay. They're not actually that expensive, and maybe a century or two out, maybe we're getting our water from someplace much further away than Pine Valley, and we can be a lot bigger then if that's what we want and that's what people in other areas want. Okay, it's possible. Who knows? Most of us are not going to be here for that.
Okay, Paul, you've addressed this a little bit, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit more. This question asks, what impact will there be to those who live and work in Pine Valley and the surrounding areas, animals, livestock, other water users?
Yeah, so I'm going to highlight a little bit more on the, no. I'm going to highlight, there we go. More specifically to our project is the environmental process. So this image you're seeing behind me represents several hundred thousands of dollars that we've spent on the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, or through the EIS, which is the Environmental Impact Statement that we've been doing in conjunction with the BLM. As we went out there to receive a right-of-way to be able to get our pipeline up into Pine Valley, it required us to go through these environmental processes. And the BLM has asked us to do a number of things. And one of them was to take the USGS, the United States Geological Survey model, and to recalibrate it and to see exactly what our impacts are going to be in that Pine Valley area. And so we had to hire a hydrology firm, which is Formation, that has done this work. And they've really done a really good job. They've been able to introduce the new state-of-the-art science to be able to identify how much water actually makes it into that basin and into the aquifer. So they've updated the precipitation amounts. They have new ways to quantify and identify evaporation and transpiration, or what plants consume out there. And overall, what they've been able to identify, which is a big benefit to us, is that there is more than 15,000 acre feet in that basin. And so some previous USGS reports that were out there, they had stated that there may not be that much. And I know for at least Nate's standpoint, when we received our water right, the state was uncertain of how much water there was out there too. The fact of the matter is we're not going to know until we get out there and we start pumping the aquifer. Once you start to stress it and be able to see how it responds, that's how you fully identify what is available in that water and that water resource. And so part of the application process that went through with the state and their approval is that our water rights in that basin were approved with a groundwater management plan as well. So we want to be sure and are sure that there is a good sustainable water resource out there as well. You know, some of this gets a little bit technical, and maybe what I'll do is I've got Kelly Crane right here. He's the district engineer. And so I'm going to see, Kelly, do you care if you just share a couple of things about what the impacts to maybe to more of the environment, any biological species or anything culturally that we may run into there?
Thanks, Paul. It's great to have this many people here attending to listen to engineers talk about water. I've spent a lot of time out there in the West Desert in Pine Valley. We've been studying this for a long time. I really appreciated what Nate had to say about our aquifer here in the Cedar Valley. We are facing a level of crisis in our own valley that because we're overpumping our aquifer, we're overusing the water that's here. Out in Pine Valley, we have kind of a unique experience of we're going to be the major user of water out there. And we need a long-term secure supply that is going to flow into our valley for a long time and never run out. That 15,000 acre feet that we're talking about to get us out to 2050 is really important. And we're going to spend a lot of money to transport that water from that basin into this basin. So taking care of Pine Valley and taking care of that aquifer is at the top of our priority list. We need to make sure that that aquifer is in good shape and we never put it into the stresses that we're currently putting on our aquifer here in the Cedar Valley. So right off the bat, we're looking at that area to be monitored, to be watched. As we put in our wells to develop the water source, we're also going to put in monitoring wells in the distance in the basin so that we can understand how the water is reacting as we pump water. And we can make adjustments as we start into that. We will have a groundwater management plan from day one. We won't be coming back 50 years later implementing a groundwater management plan. We'll be doing it right from the beginning. So we're going to make sure that that aquifer stays in good shape. With regards to wildlife and livestock and other things that are living out there now, we want to enhance that opportunity. Currently, most of the livestock and wildlife are fed from springs. You know, as far as their water supply is fed by springs that go around the basin. You can see where quite a few of them are called out on the map. The groundwater in that basin is actually separated from those springs. They're what are called perch springs all around that basin. So the water from that area is not connected to the groundwater. And it's interesting that we've been able to test quite a bit of that water. You see the water that's in the deep aquifer in the ground in the basin where we're going to be pulling our water is actually younger water than the water that's coming out of the springs up at the higher elevations. And that indicates a very strong, distinct level that is a separated aquifer, and those springs are perched. So we don't anticipate seeing any issues with those perch springs around that basin and those water supplies staying in place. Through the whole process of filing on water rights and then proceeding with developing an EIS, we've worked with our federal partners especially with wildlife, to be able to implement watering stations along the pipeline so that we can enhance and provide additional water resources for that quite dry area out there. So we have implemented that right from the beginning of our project. One kind of unique thing that we've been able to develop is, as we met with them and looked at different species out there that had trouble or had impacts because of drought or other impacts, the sage grouse out there in Pine Valley they had quite a few leks or breeding areas that they developed out there. And so we were able to work with them and implement right into our EIS an opportunity to use some of the water that we will use as we pump and as we develop our wells for development of some natural swells that will enhance the life or enhance the opportunity for leks to be developed out there for sage grouse. So we're really taking it serious that we do want to provide for the area out there and really enhance the water opportunities out there.
Thanks, Kelly.
Paul, we'll stay with you for this next question. Agriculture in Cedar Valley uses 75% of our available water, and yet they do not pay any additional higher level user fees. The more they pump, the more they profit. How can this be adjusted to be more equitable?
Yeah, so just a couple of things to highlight there. It goes back to, I think, some of the things that Rob was saying about water rights. And I think we need to make sure that we're all under the understanding that these water rights, they become personal and they are private property rights, right? That these folks own and utilize. These rights have been passed down sometimes from generation to generation. And I sometimes wonder, about, because my heritage and my background, I come from a ranching and farming community in Scipio. And we don't have a lot of growth problems there. But I think of the farmers that are here, and here we are as a community, and we're saying, the solution is we should just go and take these farmers' water rights. And the side of me that's my heritage and my farming background is, I'm thinking, well, who gives you the right to come into this valley and to say that I have to give you those water rights so that you can grow? And that becomes really difficult, right? That's a challenge that we have. I think that as farmers, they need the opportunity to make that decision, right? There's definitely a value to those water rights, and they continue to go up, and that should be a decision based off of the farmers. But it should not be a municipality that comes in and eminent domains or takes water rights. Certainly not that. So if my board directs me to do that, I think that I might be headed back to Scipio. But as far as efficiencies with farming, they are becoming more efficient, and they're regulated based off of acreage. So it's not that, hey, if we save a little bit of water, we're going to add another row to our pivot and irrigate more. No, that's not the case. The fact of the matter is they becoming more and more efficient over time, and their water use is becoming more efficient. And because of those reasons, right, our farming, as we all know, is very marginal. There's not a lot of gains in farming. And so the more that you can save, me growing up, rebending the bent nails so that we could reuse them on the farm, like that's what we did, right? Everything is marginal on farming. And so by saving a little bit on your pumping costs, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And farmers really want to be efficient, and they've really jumped on board with a lot of these practices. The other side of that is that, you can't really bill a farmer on a tiered system like a municipality. They're not connected to our tiered system. And so, these are their rights, their water rights that they're using.
A related question we'll direct to Nathan Moses. Agriculture does not have an incentive to save water because if they don't use it, they lose it. Is that an accurate statement, first of all?
It's close. Yeah, and I understand the concern there. So the full statement, I think, would be that if a water right is left unused for a period of 7 years or is not otherwise protected, then it is subject to forfeiture. Forfeiture is not a matter for the state engineer. Forfeiture is a matter for the court. So somebody has to take you to court to have your water right declared terminated in that case, okay? And I would frankly love it if all of the non-use issues went straight to the court. Unfortunately, that's not the case for us. Where we step in and get involved is if a water right has been left unused for 7 years and not otherwise protected, and somebody wants to file a change application on it, we have to go through this process that, and bless my staff for having to deal with this every day. They've done a great job because it's a very controversial and impactful issue. But what happens is if it hasn't been used, it hasn't been protected in a valley like Cedar Valley, and it's proposed to be put back to use at a different point of diversion and place of use, then it's subject to the rebuttable presumption of quantity impairment. I know that's a mouthful. What you need to know is that if it hasn't been used, it probably can't be moved. And the idea is that we don't want to put that water right that hasn't been utilized back into the schedule that I had shown earlier and bump somebody else off, right, that has been protecting their water right. Because if we face these curtailments, water right 9 that may not have otherwise been bumped off the schedule, if water right 7 comes back into production, it can push it out. And so we want to be fair to those people that have properly protected their water rights. Now, there's ways to protect your water right aside from using it. I think I alluded to that. The easiest way to do it is to file a non-use application if you intend to not use a water right for a 7-year period. Is there any other part of that I need to answer? Okay.
Okay. Next question we'll direct to Rob Dotson and Terri Hartley. How do you plan to mitigate the effects of large monsoonal storms? Why don't we use recharge basins to divert floodwater?
As we all know, the flash floods come this summer, and they brought down tremendous amounts of debris and mud with them. As most of you know, the Flying L subdivision was hit really hard, and in just a matter of hours, brought thousands of pounds of mud into their neighborhoods. And the city and county and that little community has spent the last 4 months hauling thousands of truckloads of mud out of there. So not only does the mud plug up our recharge basins with the debris and the mud, there also our diversions into our recharge places aren't built to handle those floodwaters. All the Wichita diversion can handle about 400 CFS, but when those floodwaters were over 1,000 cubic feet per second, even if we would have diverted any of that water into recharge basins, say for instance, the Western Rock Pit that can only handle about 50 CFS, it wouldn't have even put a dent in there. And then the other thing it does is put that water that we do not want to go directly into our water systems, into our drinking water systems. As you can see from this slide, these are Paul's chocolate milkshakes that they were referring to earlier, that some of that was 50% mud and 50% water. And so that would be very difficult to put into our recharge facilities.
Ditto. I think that's pretty self-explanatory there. The water that comes from these flooding does go into the aquifer. Unless out of Wichita, of course, it evaporates because of the base of Wichita is just silt, has been for hundreds and hundreds of years. But that water does get into our aquifer. We just can't control it into our aquifer and count it because it is uncountable. It's mud. It's half and half. It's half and half. Yeah, mud and chocolate milk.
Time over to
Yeah.
Tyler then.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about what Cedar City and Enoch is actually doing. Historically, in Cedar City and Enoch for that part, when we had excess floodwaters, they were all directed out towards the west, out to Quichpa, and to the north to Rush Lake, where they just flooded out there. A lot of it evaporated. Some of it went back into the aquifer. But now as our communities are developing out both of those directions, earlier this year, Cedar City recognized that we needed to do some updates, and we actually contracted with an engineering firm under an expedited basis prior to even July, when we had these monsoonal floods, that that we needed to have our master plan updated and see how we were going to handle these waters. Some of the preliminary things have come back. They're still recommending that we pattern our flood control systems after the 100-year flood zone. But due to the nature of the storms that we had, where we used to have it where maybe over a 24-hour period, the rain would come slowly and we could divert it through our systems. But now this past summer, we've seen where we have just a downpour in 1 to 3 hour times, that our systems are overloaded. And so we will be beefing those up a little bit to where it can handle more water in a shorter period of time. And obviously, Cedar City will probably be making some large infrastructure changes, and we'll probably see some of our stormwater fees go up because of that too. Hopefully it'll be marginal, but we've recognized we need to do some things because of our changing climate.
Along those same lines, Enoch City has over the last, since 2012, since we had a major downpour there that damaged 100 properties, we have been working diligently to try to come up with funding to do more projects and to do more design work. We recently obtained, after 3 years of trying, obtained $500,000 from the Natural Resource Conservation Service to do an environmental assessment on the east bench of I-15 that flows, well, it always flows now, flows into Enoch City. That was before, of course, the July and August, I don't even know what to call it, natural disaster. I call it nerves now. A little PTSD goes on in my life. But that project will be 9 major basins on that east side with a projected cost of about $25 million. We've already applied for emergency watershed funding from NRCS to pay for 75% of it. And this area right now going through that environmental assessment with an engineering firm. Same type of monies that's coming from Cedar City, and the county already has some planning going on in their areas too with the same firms. So it's part of the process of understanding our watershed and understanding what's happening. And we're diligently working forward to that. Can I make one last comment about, I've been sitting here watching you and imagining I'm sitting behind you and listening to this panel here. And I'm sure a lot of questions have gone through in your heads. And in fact, probably a lot of ideas. In fact, you probably know more than I do. In fact, I guarantee you probably know more than I do. This Pine Valley Water Project, this groundwater management plan are just pieces into the great puzzle. And Cedar City and Iron County, Conservancy District, Enoch City, the farmers, everybody is working in their own realm to come up with solutions. I know that as we have crisis, we also have innovation, and innovations are going to come. There's a lot of smart people around us that know more than we all do. And we can get that information and work together on new resources, new avenues, new sciences and technologies that are going to come up. We've been doing that. And that's where all this information has come from. From Enoch City's perspective, from our city council and mayor, we appreciate all the input we have from our great residents.
That's perfect. We had planned to grab some comments from the back of the room, but we're already 10 minutes past on that. I do want to highlight again, just that if you do have additional comments, you can comment there. You can get your phone and submit it through a QR code, and we will respond to those via email or on our website. So thank you. I'll turn the time over to Tyler.
Okay, thank you to our panelists. And again, while they did a great job of addressing the bulk of the questions and the types of questions that poured in prior to this meeting, we want to know what solutions you have to bring to the table, your ideas. All of us together are a lot smarter than any one of us in this room, right? So those ideas are very valuable to us. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for coming today. We look forward to your feedback and to answering your questions.